The street is where we create. We call it suburbanpreneurship.
Mixing big company resources with an entrepreneurial spirit.
This is Electric People.
Danny Deaton, welcome.
That's a powerful name.
Yeah. Huh. Danny Deaton, it's a brand.
Really?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. It's a movement.
I'm gonna run with it.
Yeah, dude. Thank you for being here. We met literally via text no more than 3 days ago.
That's true.
And that's the world we live in.
Yeah.
We sit together having a conversation. But you and Paul, you guys coach youth football?
Yep.
You guys
Couple
do it all.
seasons now. Yeah.
How's the youth football team doing?
I mean, very good.
I need you to know, Danny, that sometimes when Paul looks super busy in his office, I'll peer over his shoulders. You know what it is.
Yeah, I know.
It's a lot of X's and O's and routes, and I don't know how to read a route, but I'm convinced that our man here does. So
I actually feel honored because I got to see a side of him I don't think even in this large industry you guys are involved in, most people do. Just this authentic, caring, so much love and desire to help mentor these boys around a sport that he loves. And so we've just had so many nights sitting there where we set the world aside, all the stresses, the pressures of life, and we're just in the moment with these boys, and it's pretty awesome. At least what keeps us coming back.
what a gift, man.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You get to meet a lot of people, and Danny's someone that, has stood out to me as I've got to know him a little bit better, and the work he does, we're going to talk about in a minute. But just personally, the thing that he's taught me really well is to just cherish the moment. And a lot of times he'll remind me hey man, you got to remember it doesn't get better than this. These are the best days we're going to get. And it's fall. It's beautiful. We're at a field with 27 kids and we're trying to teach them how to play football. And we're making these memories with our sons, and just soaking it in and cherishing it and kind of living in the moment is something that you've really taught me, and a great reminder for all of us. So,
Oh, thanks.
That's something that I need to be better at. It's a good thing to be known for.
Yeah.
So Paul had the idea to have a conversation today that I actually think is in a bit different of a vein than we're used to. So we're a direct-to-home sales channel, right? So we have this really important cause where we're helping people power their lives in a better way at a pretty crucial time. And a lot of the people that we're talking to today are kind of like sales entrepreneurs. They're aligned with the cause, but they're using this as their vehicle to help them get where they want to go in life.
Yeah.
But your work is in the space of addiction recovery, and specifically support for families who love addicts. And I thought this is a pretty special kind of niche.
Yeah.
And we just want to hear what you do. And you have a lot of really interesting, I think, philosophies that kind of stand out that I think will help a lot of people. But more, how do you define what you do? How do you select the specific type of do you call it therapy, work that you do?
Yeah, and I don't know if I selected or if it was, in my opinion, it's just the directive God gave me as I decided to go down this avenue. First of all, to step back, this isn't what I envisioned doing. It never was. I was a salesman at heart. I actually have some experience. It was many years ago. I often think I'm younger than I am, but then when I start putting in perspective when this was, it was a long time ago. I spent a summer in Chicago selling, and
With who?
well, back then it was Pinnacle.
Okay. What year?
I spent one summer selling, and it was also in Chicago.
I was in
Yes.
Schaumburg.
2003 was my year.
What year was your year?
I think I was 2 years before that.
Wild.
Yeah.
Early.
Yeah, really?
Always since I was little. I had a father that was successful as an entrepreneur, and I watched it, and that was the route I was headed down. But then circumstances in my life, the way things evolved, led me down to a different path. And when it did, I took the opportunity to pursue something I was passionate about, which I now do. And I don't say it's the greatest financial decision. I think there'll probably be easier routes to go to achieve the financial goals I had, but I've been determined to do both, to take some of the hardship and experiences that I learned in life, unfortunate as they were, and apply them to help people. Because I've got to a point in life now where I'm starting to balance the value of worth and the value of what I do. And it's a fine line, right? I think we all strive for that, but I experienced some things in life I feel relate to a lot of people, not only in this industry, but just in general. And my life, not to give an elaborate story on it, because I'd rather focus on what we're doing now and how it can be applied to families to help who are suffering, right? We talk about this. First of all, now what I do as a certified interventionist, I've taken a very niche approach to targeting the family. And I'll get more into that in a little bit as to why. Some look at it as like maybe in a business sense, not the greatest route to go, because who I'm targeting is a family who in all reality is doing pretty good. Mom and dad or spouse or sibling, they're doing okay. They're doing the things in life they're supposed to, but yet they have this person close to them they love. A brother, a sibling, a spouse who is obviously struggling and headed down a path of destruction. And they're sitting there going, what do we do? How do we help? Most all of them have the best of intentions of wanting to help. A lot of them have the means to help, but they just can't figure it out. And so that's the niche. And how that came about was an interesting story. But just to revert back to why I got to this place and why I chose to do this was because as I grew up, there were things I was dealing with that others weren't aware of. And I was raised by goodly parents. Like my dad to this day is my best friend. He's my mentor. For many different reasons that we face, whether it's guilt, shame, things we did wrong. And in this circumstance, I kept things I was dealing with from people I cared about, like my parents, who would have wanted me to share, who would have hoped I would, just like I would with my children, and I'm sure you would with yours. But it was that fear of disappointment. So there was just some discomfort I had growing up, but yet I still put on that front. I still went out and dominated life. I was successful at what I was doing. I was ambitious. I was doing the right things, but yet there was just this sort of irritability I had with myself, a restlessness I had with myself. And I never really knew what to do with it. So as I grew up, graduated high school, and moved on, I won't give you all the details, but I served a mission for my church. I was successful graduating from college. There were things now that I refer to as secrets I was harboring inside that were festering, right? And sometimes those secrets for people can be like trauma or tragedy that they experience, something hard, like a hardship. Maybe somebody wronged you or it could be as serious as someone molested you when you were young. For other people, and where I've seen it very common, and I'm sure and even in this industry, it's just maybe the pressure of becoming this, right? That it's a pressure that they feel, and other people may be like, well, that's not a big deal. Just keep working hard. You're going to be successful. But that pressure, if it's not worked through, talked about, it just becomes daunting. And simultaneously, we live in a world now where when you have unwanted feelings and pressures and stresses in life, there is a slew of things available in the form of distraction. Mm-hmm. Now, regardless of what your spiritual beliefs are, I think most of us would agree that there's like the opposition in all things, right? Like there's good and there's bad. And there are plenty of distractions out there that are meant to be as a counterfeit. I mean, we see what those are now, right? Like, heck, with technology, there's things, social media, there's things, but in the form of pornography, drugs, alcohol, there's a million distractions out there. So for people like me who are dealing with these, there's something ailing them inside. There's a discomfort or a restlessness. Often when these counterfeits are introduced, it's wrong, it's bad, it's not a smart decision to do it, but it's confusing because the moment you do, there's this calm. There's some clarity. There's some confidence. There's a distraction from all this unwanted feelings. And that's really confusing because now begins this process where I know many people listening to this have experienced it to some degree, where you're doing things you shouldn't and aren't healthy, but yet it's also rewarding you in a way that's really hard not to.
Hmm. Would you say that's where like addiction starts, where is there higher danger of like an addiction you can't control if it's founded in like escapism?
Yep.
Is that accurate?
And I hope, even if there's just a handful of people listening who are working so hard and trying with everything they have to build and produce something great in life, all addictions are progressive. And the word alone is hard to relate to, right? I spend a lot of my time arguing with successful dads whose son is like clinging for life because addiction has progressed, that still think this is a choice, right?
Yeah.
There's science that proves that eventually this turns into a disease of the brain, right? There's science that proves it. Thankfully, there's lots of studies out there now that are showing it. But the question is, when does that happen? Because the truth is, in the beginning of my
It
journey,
all starts with a choice, you're saying.
it all starts with a choice.
Yeah.
But some people get hung up on that. And that's my job. One of my main jobs is helping families overcome that. That your loved one lost their ability to choose a long time ago. Now, when exactly that was, but in the beginning, it is choices. Again, whether it was out of desperation because you were wronged by someone or hurt by someone, or you were just curious and stupid like it was in my case. There was a choice made. I love looking at it in the simple form as this. At some point along the way, people experience consequences. You get caught by a spouse. You get caught by an employer. It's starting to affect you negatively at work.
Get arrested.
Correct.
Yeah.
But a person still continues to choose this thing despite the consequences that are happening or could happen, is usually when I think it's more relatable for people to understand, okay, now it's turned into whatever you want to call it, a dependency or an addiction or whatever. But often it isn't until it gets so progressed that families go, oh. And the tragedy to me is, where I really hope this hits home is a lot of people in your industry. There are so many people that in some way or another are self-medicating with something. Had I not been addicted to prescription medication and had problems with pornography while I was selling, I probably would have been the top person in the entire country. Because still, despite that, I was having success, but yet I had these secrets and I was self-medicating can be in the form of sitting on social media for too long. It can be in food, but there are some of those other more dangerous things people fall into the trap of. I love speaking truth. Some people don't like me for it, but nowadays there are so many things that are justified in microdosing, ketamine and kratom, things that are legal that people can indulge in. And none of them look at this choice is going to lead me into incarceration or homeless. Nobody.
So tell me like a minute about, like, give a little more on your background. So you went through life like any, like teenager and early young adult. You have things you're working out, you're sandwiched up. Like, how do you go from that through that journey to where you are today?
So they're all progressive, and the speed in which they progress is different for everybody, depending on your circumstances, maybe where you come from. But mine started younger, and I still remember the day. It was the summer before high school. I still remember the day, despite everything I'd been through, where the first time I drank alcohol. Again, at this time, my dad was a bishop in our church. He was a successful businessman. I was raised better. I knew better. I remember I was shaking so bad the first time I did it. I was like, this is wrong. We grew up in an era, remember, like the best attempt they had at teaching people about addictions was that frying pan thing. You remember that?
Brain on drugs.
Don't do it because this is your brain and this is your brain. No one explained why. Like no one explained the counterfeit. No one explained.
It's funny too, because like they've done like excessive marketing like analyses on what behavioral messages work, and the worst you could like click it or ticket, like those that your brain will fry, are actually like instill this like side of rebelliousness that like makes people
Want to do it more?
Yeah, like they don't. It's so dissonant.
Who's the CMO that did that? We should.
They just. But anyway, yeah, it's very, very interesting.
That's
right?
what it was.
But
And
that's what we had.
And it was kind of how the generation that we grew up in followed suit. It was like, don't do this, it's bad. And you're like, well, why? I pride myself now on educating my kids on, guess why? Because it's amazing in the beginning. Kids do it because they don't understand it. And that's what happened to me when I was young. I remember shaking, like I said, and I actually threw up after 2 of them because it made me sick. But there was still this moment where all of a sudden, that restlessness that I had inside of me since I was a kid, most of my teachers referred to it as like, he's ADD or he just bouncing off the walls. There was a calm. There was this peaceful feeling. And it was really confusing because here it was like, don't do this, it's bad. And I felt really good.
Mm-hmm.
That, to answer your question, it kind of like continued to be a challenge in my life. So as I grew up, it was always confusing because at that point, it was a choice. I knew I shouldn't be doing these things, but every time I did, I enjoyed myself. I felt free. I felt so good that it was hard not to recognize the benefit at that point. And it kind of just progressed. I was really good at keeping it a secret. Most people in their addictions for a good period of time are really good at not letting anybody know. It's actually the easiest thing in the world is to keep it from people until it isn't. But that's what happened. So every time in my life, though, just to give some context, is like after high school, I moved to Hawaii. I thought I was going to be a surfer. We're living in Maui, working on Kaanapali Beach, just living the dream. Laying there one night in Hana on the beach with my buddies, looking up at the moon. And by the way, yes, we were on mushrooms with some locals. I had this crazy experience where I felt like I was empty, like my soul was gone. So at that moment, I said, I'm just going to change. I went home, did everything I had to prepare myself. I went on a mission when I was like 22 years old. And I redirected my life and put focus where it needed to be. And I was successful. But what I hadn't done is I hadn't ever unloaded those secrets. I hadn't ever healed from them. I hadn't ever learned how to
work through it.
Yes, work through it. I just put them aside
With
close
grit,
that-
with grit
yep.
and determination,
Yes.
willpower.
and then focus somewhere else better. And it worked for a while until it didn't. Did a mission, came home, graduated from University of Utah, started a business, got married. Challenges came back into life. Struggles came back into life. And I, again, was confronted with this opportunity, right? And I'm a big believer in God, and I believe there's an opposition to this. I call him Satan, and I feel like he's an opportunist. So it's almost like he just waits. You're weakened, you're exhausted, you're worn down, and there's this relief. And so here it was at a time in my life where I was rebuilding. I had done all the right things, and it was offered. I'm the poster child for the opioid epidemic. So this was back in life, got injured snowboarding. Doctor became my drug dealer and was prescribed Oxycontin, which is pharmaceutical heroin. And it was a big problem. We all kind of are aware of the opioid epidemic in our country. So here I was doing all the right things, and this came back in my life. Now, taking these medications for the right reasons at first, but as soon as it was time to stop, I experienced the discomfort. The medications took away the unwanted feelings. So I went right back to what I knew best, which was how to avoid unwanted feelings, how to provide comfort, because I couldn't find it anywhere else in the world. Now, again, at this point, I had done enough that I thought this isn't going to be a problem. It's not going to progress. I got this. I've been raised better. I know better. I've had success. I'm never going to let this control my life. Just like everybody else thinks, well, it progressed. And as it does, consequences start to show up. Relationship starts to get affected. The byproduct of addictions, just so everyone knows, is lying. You lie to yourself, you lie to everyone else. Mm-hmm. And that was the byproduct, and it catches up. So when it did, things progressed. Just to save you a very long story, here I was, that guy, right? As a young boy, as an Eagle Scout, I was a pianist. I'd lettered in 3 different sports. I'd gone and done all the things. Got married, here I was. And as my addiction progressed, it progressed quickly. Loss of a relationship, started to have financial ruin, straining relationships, and it ended me up in a horrible place. I mean, to the point where a friend and I were trying to rob the drug dealers here in Utah. He hit a parked car going about 45 miles an hour. I was so sick at the time, my feet were up on the dash, on the passenger seat, and it threw me through the windshield, launched me 10 feet in front of the car. At this point, I weighed 92 pounds. Every vein in my body had turned black, and he left me in a home in Draper, the basement of a home, to die. I was in that home for a few days on the floor, and
Just by yourself alone.
yeah. Just by the grace of God, my father and brother had had a dream the same night. They were speaking at my funeral, and they hadn't seen me for a while. But when they realized they both had the same dream, when they told each other about it, it's like, whoa. So they went on a search to find me. Series of events led them to finding me in the basement of that home. Here's kind of a pinnacle part of what saved my life and what motivated me to do what I do now. Is my dad, meanwhile, he was super successful. He was that guy. He built a monster company. He had to learn how to let go of control. So he had contacted a treatment center. And back in the day, treatment centers weren't fueled by insurance now, which changed a lot. It required families' help. So he had sought help, and there was a recovery coach who was teaching him what to do, how to respond, what his role was and wasn't. He had done enough work that when he found me in the basement at home, here I was just dying. I mean, I could go on and tell you about the out-of-body experiences, but all of a sudden I see the door open and I'm laying on the cement floor, busted legs. I couldn't even move. I hadn't had food and water in days. And this light comes across the floor, and I look up, and there's two men standing there, and one was my dad and one was my brother. And my dad had done enough work to realize he was powerless, but what he could offer. So he looked at me in that state and just said, "Hey, if you're ready, we are. And we know what the path out of this looks like. But if you're not ready, I've made peace with God that he can have you." That didn't come overnight. That didn't come easily for him to be able to do that. And I was in such a broken place that I laid there, put my head in the floor, and I'm like, "I hate you. Get out of here. I just want to die." He had the courage to turn and walk and to leave his oldest boy right there on that floor. And my brother follows him out, and it wasn't until they were leaving that I just yelled, "Help." In that moment began a long path of healing. I won't bore you with those details, but just an excruciating long road out. It included jail time. It included multiple programs, being in hospitals, and a path of recovery that led me to the place where I am today. So why I do what I do now today stems from a very real experience in my life. And part of me wanted to just kind of close that chapter, move on. But I could not avoid the calling that just continually came to me over and over to, like, we've got to help more people. And what I believe is the only way to save people from their addictions is by empowering the greatest threat in the world to addiction, which is a family. But the number of families that know what to do, when to enter, is none. Even the best, most successful, educated, God-fearing families, had they been through it themselves, they don't know what to do. And why would they? How would anyone know how to go out and be successful selling had they not been thoroughly trained, educated, mentored, shown the way? It's the same when a family tries to deal with this. So,
Well, even more so probably because when you're not operating from the same reality, right? Like the addicted person has these survival instincts that are like steering them and like making these decisions that a rational person that's not dealing with that doesn't understand. You can look at that person and be like, knock it off.
Yeah.
Like, I remember thinking about this. I've seen this multiple times. Never dealt with it personally in my own body, but I've seen it. And I remember, like, on a couple instances saying, all of your problems go away if you just stop. Like, you don't even have to do anything. Just don't do that thing. And I remember in my head being like, this is the craziest thing. Why is your life so complicated? Just stop. And so, like, I love the idea of focusing on families and things like that, because you look at it and it's like, not only why would you can't understand it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, maybe you can because you've been there, but like, I think of your dad looking at you, it's like, that's just a mindset he probably just didn't understand.
Didn't understand. It's the only fatal illness on the planet where the sick person fights to stay sick, and the family often does nothing about because they all disagree or argue about what should or shouldn't be done.
Yeah.
So it's one thing that I see a lot with our people, tell me this, is most of our viewers are really self-confident. That's why they do this job, because they're like, I don't want to work for a fixed wage. I can go make my way. Yeah. So they're inherently self-confident. And with that, a behavior I see a lot is like, I know what I want to do. I know I'm going to get back to that, but I can take a little sabbatical. I can go take a little journey out and sample these relief options as you kind of describe them. And they're really confident they can come back from it. And you kind of see them come back, quickly the first time and then slower maybe the second time. Talk to me about like your view on that.
Well, even those that are able to put a hard stop when they see it, they miss this opportunity to learn why.
Yeah.
Because I think people use the excuse because they're just curious, they're trying things, but most people that are seeking this is because something's missing. Like there is a void somewhere. There is like something that's not settled. It could be on a large scale. It could be what most people perceive as very minimal, but most people are seeking that for a reason. And so even the hard stop for those that are able to come back, which is the lowest percentage.
Yeah.
You miss the opportunity to figure out why. Because instead of talking about it, seeking help, finding community and working through something, you just like stopped, pivoted, and went into a different direction. But the truth is, for every one of the people listening, the principle about addiction I lead with the most in schools, churches, and families is whatever you found out about someone you care about. Let's say all of a sudden you discover something with a brother-in-law. You're only seeing the crumbs that they dropped, where they got sloppy, made a mistake, or messed up. So the people that are listening into this, who started to feel a loss of control, they already know how bad it is, but everyone else is just finding out the very tip of the iceberg. Everyone's able to cover up that addiction for long enough. And again, if you can't relate to the word addiction, call it a dependency. If you really want to know if you're dependent or not, then just see if you can stop for a few days. I mean, all of us would say we're addicted to these because you can't.
Mm-hmm.
But when the people go out and come back like you're describing, it's a very dangerous place to be. And even if they're able to self-correct for that time, if they didn't learn why, it's only a matter of time until they experience tragedy. It could be a hardship financially, an illness with someone in the family, a divorce or something that happens where
Kicks them back into it.
where they were able to like control it, kicks them back into a loss of control pretty quick. So I would just hope that anyone out there that's listening, that maybe even if you have a hard time just recognizing that you have developed a dependency, is that you would take some self-accountability to realize, yeah, maybe this has gotten a little bit more out of control than I'd hoped. Because if there's just one thing I could plead with people, is the only way to avoid going down a path like I did, or all my friends that died from this, and the 108,000 of other people that overdosed this year, is prevention is the only way to avoid going down this path. And prevention comes in the several different forms, but mainly it's on telling on yourself. And if it's hard to do that with like a religious leader or a spouse or a parent, is just finding someone else. I mean, there's lots of professional mentors and recovery coaches out there. Even if you don't feel like it's progressed to this point, is just starting to talk about it with somebody. It's amazing that even men that are so successful can operate on this level when there's things going on in their life that shouldn't be. If they remain a secret, at some point, it will be your downfall.
Tell us your tagline.
Our secrets keep us sick.
I got a lot, like, I think what like prompted me to try to bring on here was you sharing that with our youth football team, the seventh graders. I think it's such like a great principle, because our secrets keep us sick is obviously like directly applicable in your like slogan for the work that you do. But I think it's applicable in life generally. And I think about like our salespeople. I think so many people have secrets or tell themselves lies that really hinder their performance.
Everything.
And so if you're like, I work hard, it's like you are telling yourself a lie. You actually don't work that hard. You don't knock that many doors. You don't, I knock doors 20 hours a week. No, you don't. You've been lying to yourself. You actually knock 4 hours a week, actually. The rest of the time, you're kind of driving around. You're out in your car 20 hours, right? And so it's like this principle, I think, can be applied to so many facets of your life. And that's why I love like just this concept of like being honest.
Yeah.
And so you would say the first thing, and going back maybe more to like addiction, helping people to like overcoming the demise of our secrets, keeping us sick and staying sick, is telling someone. That's step one.
It's the prevention. I mean, where my focus is on the many families out there who have a loved one whose addictions progress to where it's undeniable.
It's not a secret anymore.
Yeah. People are like, we need help. This is bad. That's where I step in. And it's amazing just to like flex a little bit. The national average right now, if you go to the Department of Health and Human Services, there's 48, at least 2 years ago, there's 48 million people with known addictions. The key word is known. It's been documented. They've been arrested. They've been to the hospital. Where do most addictions lie?
In the shadows.
In the unknown. So the number's probably 5-6 times that. Of those millions of known people, less than 5% of those ever sought the proper help they needed. And if you look at the reasons why, the number one is they felt like they didn't need it. None of them do. So I flex because in our program, when families learn how to intervene with the right tools and the right guidance, this year alone, we're a little over 80%. Last year, we were at 78% of those families who enroll are successful getting their loved one into treatment. And not only that, that's just the first step, but is understanding what recovery looks like and how to support it, how to use the means that they have, like the financial resources they have to encourage long-term recovery. That's where I thrive. But when you go back to prevention, that's where I got emotional talking, because I know how many guys, this industry it's a highly saturated industry. Same with people like police officers, firemen, even like high level executives, like attorneys. The saturation of people with dependencies that are self-medicating, it's high. So why I get emotional is, here's your chance. This is, if you've been praying and trying to do this on your own, is to stop doing it on your own. You've got to find a safe place, a safe person. We all do this thing about keeping secrets. And if it's simple, like maybe you're addicted to porn and you have a hard time sharing that with somebody, or you're not selling and you're doing half of what you say, what happens to people like myself and others when that secret's kept inside and you know you're lying, it just creates more of a void and a hole that is eventually filled with what?
More of the relief.
Counterfeit.
Yeah.
Because it becomes unbearable. That's where my addiction really progressed. It wasn't in the things I was doing. At that point, no one would have been like, we would have been like, well, come on, how can we help? But I didn't want to disappoint people. I didn't want people to worry. So I continued to lie. And the lying just creates this deeper pocket that has to be filled. So I think we've come far enough. Employers have, friends have, people in their church communities have, that when we shared the things, the burdens we're dealing with, who cares? For every one or two people that judge you,
That's what I've been thinking, man. Like, I don't want to be insensitive, but like, take like an opioid addiction. We tell ourselves, if you're the person that's dependent, oh, like they would think less of me, or you build this like whole thing. But if the most unsuspecting my dad came to me and said, hey man, I like got on these pills, I'm having a hard time getting off them, I'd be like, well, yeah, they're like highly addictive. Like their view of what would happen will not happen. The person that you tell them to, if someone was like, hey, I looked at something on the computer that I feel weird about, it's like, well, yeah. Like, I don't, like,
Yeah.
what is that? Like, why, what is it in our brain that paints this stark, untrue reality that's preventing people from like dispelling their secrets?
Well, it's the counterpart to the forms of poison, I call them, that, I feel like the opposition, and in my opinion, is Satan uses, right? It's like he gives you something of comfort, but it also creates this false idea that people are going to think a certain way about you.
Yeah.
There may be people that are like, oh, because they don't know what to do, but very few people are going to look at you differently. They're just going to want to help. They're going
And
to.
the reality is the person you told's probably got something too.
So
Right?
to be honest, that's where what I do now started. So after I got into recovery, I jumped into the restaurant world. It's the only thing harder than overcoming a drug and alcohol addiction. Do not do that. But along the way, I told my story everywhere I went, especially every year in church on my sobriety date. I would stand up there at the pulpit. Not only I'd go to meetings, but I also go to the pulpit and I'd tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
I may have one or two people that afterwards looked at me weird as I walked down the hall, but where it became overwhelming, especially in my community, was, I'm not kidding, like I would share and there would be like 40 people who would line up or would come call me or message me. And it was never like, yeah, I think I had an uncle once. It was, we don't know where my son is.
Mm.
My brother's been out on the streets for 2 years.
Mm.
My spouse has been dealing with this and it's killing me and the kids. And it was always really close to home. And I just saw these people who were so desperate to help and just couldn't figure out what to do. And that's where I decided, that was going to be my focus. It was really cool too, because downtown, I don't know if you know Orrin Hatch here.
Yeah.
I got to sit in an opioid symposium once with him and a bunch of leaders in the state, just because I had a friend that was really good friends with him. And this is when I started my business and I got licensed, certified to do this, is he sat in there and there was this whole room, like this big room, and he slammed his hand on the counter, this old guy, and he's like, someone just give me the no BS answer. Why? Why is this such a problem? Why can't we help more people? And there's a gentleman that ran a program here locally called Circ Lodge, and he said, well, sir, there's a lot of great programs where people come and get help, but then they return back to the environment they left, and rarely do they recover. But when people come and get help and you return to an environment where people are changed, they're understanding, they have clarity on what to do and how to help, they almost always recover.
Mm.
And it was at that point I said, well, that's going to be my focus. I want to be the person that supported my father, be able to get to a place where he could look at someone that broken and have the courage to just say, hey, if you're going to stand up, we're going to help carry you through this. But if you can't stand up, I'm ready to move on.
It's really interesting. I remember spent some time in Africa, and human trafficking is a problem there.
Mm.
And it's crazy. You would think no one gets human trafficked more than once. But the reality is it's usually multiple times, and it's the parents and their at-home system, it's oftentimes they're selling their child into slavery or human trafficking or different things. And so when I was talking to this individual who runs this big organization we've done some stuff with, I was talking about other organizations that do the same thing as him. And he's like, their headline is the same as me. We're all rescuing kids. He said, what you don't know is 80% of my funding and effort is going in and doing the research to figure out what happened, what's the home life, what's the situation, and spending years of rehab with that person to get them into a good path. Not just grabbing a kid, pulling him out of a thing and putting him back home, and he's going to get sold again. And so that same principle is kind of what you're saying. You've got to go fix that ecosystem at home for someone to recover. And that's where you focus.
That's where I focus. And it's interesting that the focus, most of the people in our program are those successful people. They're like successful in their businesses, their home life, and pretty much every other area of life, except this one. Addiction doesn't play by any set of rules. It really makes no sense. And so it's often the people with more success that they neglect to get the help they need.
That makes sense to me, though.
Yeah.
Because like these are people that defy odds all the time.
Correct.
Right? Like the life experience has shown them that the norm doesn't apply to them. Right? Like
they fix problems all day.
They can handle more than most people. This is one of the things like I notice we've all done door-to-door sales. The reason it's so hard is because almost nobody is better than that learning curve. But life experience has shown people that they are. So like you go into a team office and it's like, okay, you on a whim went out to Chicago for a 100% commission job. Well, so did everybody else. Oh, and you're an athlete in high school. Well, yeah, those are the type of people that make decisions like this. And football is dangerous. Yeah, but you survived it, right? And so like I can see how like high level people, number one, they go for it, right? Like they take chances, they go for it. But I think life experience has shown them, like, if you're like, hey, you could get addicted. Well, yeah, that's for everybody else, or, hey, it's going to be hard to manage. I get it. I can manage. Or it's like, dude, I deal with a lot. I need a break every now and then. I can just see how people like that could be prone to this thing that once it gets its hooks in you, man, it just.
Yeah, and no one sees it coming. Not a single person ever starts.
No one's surprised.
Entertaining or just even, I don't know, they're curious. Thinks it's going to end up leading into wearing a bright orange jumpsuit like it did with me. I still remember waking up in a cell in a jumpsuit, sobered up, just going, what just happened? Like, how did this even happen?
You were totally shocked.
And it's the same everyone else experience. And that's why there's two sides to this. If you have a loved one suffering, stop trying to do it. Stop trying to make sense of. Your skill set and the ability to help them will be what provides continued success, but not in the beginning. They need to be around other people, understand. They need to be around other broken people. They need to start this process somewhere other than you. If people can let go of that, it's amazing how many of their loved ones get on a path to recovery and the family learns how to support it.
So that's step one.
Yeah. But outside of that is the people. I know many people probably saw the topic or the title of this, and maybe were immediately turned away, but I also know that there's so many good men whose lives have become unmanageable to some degree, and they just can't beat this or fight it on their own. And to every one of you, I just plead to avoid a disaster in your life that is coming. How quickly, I don't know, is to stop doing it alone. To take that leap of faith, to seek help, to talk to someone about it, because that burden that you're carrying is so much heavier than it really is. It feels so much heavier than it really is. And there's such power in coming together in community where you talk about it and you realize you're not the only one, and you can even just admit it out loud. Yeah, I've lost control of this. I don't like it. The big leading one right now for men, and especially our age, a little bit younger and a little bit older, is pornography. And to what degree do you have a problem, and how far has it gotten out of control? And can they talk about that? I mean, the speedball of the industry that you're in and every other high-level successful industry, the speedball of this generation is Adderall and porn. The combination of those two has shown to produce higher levels of dopamine than mixing heroin and cocaine. Those two specific things. Now, each of them on their own. Now, that's something a lot of people are dealing with, where if they could just talk about it and work through it, it never has to progress to that next level. But the amount of people who are willing to do that is far too few. And that's what I've kind of set my mission in life to change, and to be willing to talk about these challenges, because it gives somebody else an invitation to talk about them also. I think in this industry, what would be incredible is providing opportunities where guys could even talk about that.
Yeah.
You know, in a place, a safe place where no one's going to feel threatened to anything and just the struggles they deal with. It won't be long till those of us that go to church spend half the time we're there in those type of settings instead of being lectured and having talks. Is just, there's real power in that. And the longer you try to do this and handle it on your own, the greater risk you have of losing everything.
I keep thinking of this conversation I had with my son. So we've had a family member, I told you, who recently passed away, who struggled with addiction. The whole time I knew him for 20 years, right? And sometime before that. And, in that time, I've had kids, and my oldest is now almost 16. And so when he's like a very pensive kid, like he really thinks about what's actually happening here, kind of always has. And I remember one conversation where
The frying pan doesn't work on him.
No,
It's a sure brown judge. He's not like, oh, okay.
yeah. But I remember one time, he was really young. He said to me, he's like, what are drugs?
Yeah.
Like, what's the big deal? Kind of a thing. And I remember recognizing it as this is probably a moment that I don't know why, I need to get it right. I remember not thinking oh, you don't want to talk about that. They're bad. Don't do it. He needed a better answer than that, because I think he could tell the concern of his family. And it was a thing that we dealt with in our family. And I remember just telling him, I don't know where the answer came from, but I'm grateful for it. But I was like, drugs, the reason that they're bad is they make you feel like you're happy, but they take away your freedom. That's the problem. And so we've tried to teach the kids, we want you to have freedom. Your mom and I, we want you to have free, we want you to experience life. We want you to, I have a lot of freedom in my life. I had a lot of freedom growing up. But if you can live to where you're free, you can choose to, some people can choose to drink or not drink. Some people that choice doesn't work for them. But you said, to see if you're dependent on something, try to stop. And so I remember just telling me as a little kid, and I've been able to go back to it since to say hey, do you know why we don't do that? And the answer always comes well, that takes your freedom away,
That's empowerment. You connected the dots for your son. But for a lot of us growing up, it's just don't do it, don't do it.
Yeah.
And that works for some. Some people are okay, don't do it, I won't do it. But other people are curious, they need a better answer. And I loved empowering my son, and anyone else out there has young kids. Learn to have difficult conversations, create a safe place in your home where you can talk about these things, model it for them, tell them about your failures, your insecurities, your faults, but connect the dots and letting them know that for some people, they'll do it and they don't like it. Other people, it's this magical feeling, but explaining it's a counterfeit, and that sometimes you just have to accept that everyone looks like they're having fun, but helping them realize it doesn't last. And so we make these other choices so that we don't fall to that trap instead of it's bad.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the family. So I had a friend who I actually didn't know has a brother who has real addiction problems. And I was just telling him about what you do. And him and his wife got on a bunch of your content, and they were just taking it in, and they ended up sending it to his parents, the parents of his kid's brother. And they were like, this changed. We're doing it 180 degrees wrong. And they care a ton. They're working hard at it and trying to help their child with an addiction. They're like, my natural instincts were 180 off of what I should have been doing. So maybe talk just a couple quick tips or thoughts around what do you see with families who have someone they care about that they desperately want to help, and the things that you're like, that's the worst thing you could do. Don't do that.
It's like throwing water on a grease fire.
Yeah, yeah. This should help.
Yeah.
Well, to every dad out there, lectures and telling them and trying to prove to them that it's wrong and bad is the last thing to do, right? But I'm glad you asked that question, because this is my wheelhouse. First of all, stop trying to do this on your own. Because
you're saying the helper parent.
The parent,
Yeah.
The spouse that's been pleading with, exhausting themselves, trying to talk sense into this person, just stop doing it. Get professional help.
There's thing that you put I was reviewing one of your posts last night, and the word that stuck out was you've become a rag doll to the addiction, right?
It will wear you down.
Yeah.
No matter how, two amazing men like this, if it happens to your son, it'll eventually wear you down. And why? Because everything we say and we talk about that we've learned about addiction families should do, guess what muddies all of it?
Sure,
Love.
your love. Yeah.
If we were talking about any of your employees, okay, yes, we're going to do that.
You'd be logical,
No matter how much emotion is involved, but when it's yours, we see it different. We make exceptions. We play games in our mind. We all think that we're unique. Maybe we're special, but we're not unique. And that's what makes it difficult. And that's where what happens is our love allows us to overfunction, to be over-involved, to blame ourselves for things we did. And the only thing that wins in that case is the addiction. It just gets one more day where people don't do anything and this sick person's just stuck fending for themselves. So what I would recommend is, first, everything you can do to prevent this before is the most impactful thing you can do. But once it sets in and there's a problem, is to seek professional help, because your heart will fail you. If good, successful parents, and there's plenty listening, if you don't gain conviction about what to do, your emotions will dictate the situation and your heart will fail you. Convictions are only gained, especially for successful people, in, do I have a plan? What does a plan look like? Well, what is my role at this point, and how do I influence them on doing it? What should we be doing while they're doing it? When they come home from program, let's say they go to a treatment or sometimes rehabilitation, when they come home, what are we supposed to do? When you empower people with these tools, it allows them to change the way in which they respond. It allows them to recognize what their role is and isn't. So the easy answer is stop. Stop trying to make sense of something that you haven't experienced before, that doesn't play by the rules, and allow someone else to help start the process, because then, as the process is started, that's when the amazing home and parents that they came from, or the spouse that they have, can influence them, is down the road, but never in the beginning. For some reason, that's the hardest part. Stigma is a big part of it. People are like, well, gosh, we're the Deatons, or we're the Jones. We don't just send our kid over there. That right there is...
Don't let pride get in the way.
And then lastly, let me tell you the biggest lie. What has killed more people than overdose, accidents, and violence combined when it comes to drugs and alcohol is the phrase, they have to want it for themselves. It's the greatest lie about addiction, and it's taken more lives and destroyed more families than any other thing. Someone or something has to intervene. When it gets to that place where it's scary, most people sit back and are waiting for this person to take the wheel of their life again. Consequences are piling up. Sure, at some point they're going to wake up and do something about it. The only people in recovery, and I have 18 years of experience meeting countless other people, someone or something intervened. For a lot of people, it's a judge. For far too many people, what intervenes is death. And for a fortunate few, it's those people in their life who learned how to effectively intervene, how to encourage a long-term program of recovery, and what their role in that was. And that's the game changer. And the number of families that are willing to seek that help, unfortunately, is too small, and that's what we're here to try and change.
I've never thought about that before. I just kind of took that as core truth. Like, yeah, they have to want it. But it's almost like expecting someone that is like completely under the influence of something to snap out of it.
Yeah.
Like, you weren't able to get a hold of it before. Now that it's really bad, what makes you think?
Well, and for more context on that, in order to stay in recovery and change, at some point they're going to have to want it.
Yeah.
Right? At some point they'll have to have that desire, but people are waiting for that to be what starts
To start, it's not the starter. Yeah, don't wait for the starter. You're going to have
So
a
the
problem.
starter, you need help.
And
And you need to be trained on how to help.
people always say, well, what's the key to long-term recovery? Like, what's the number one key? First of all, it's time to heal, overcome everything that you've gone through. But the number one is those that are willing to do what's required rather than what they feel like doing. And that's kind of what recovery's blessed me with. Is the greatest gift, whether it's in business, parenting, anything we do in life. Am I doing what's required of me, or am I doing what I feel like doing?
Yeah.
That's one of the greatest blessings, is recovery's given me the ability to be uncomfortable, to experience discomfort, to be okay in discomfort, to deal with difficult and awkward things, instead of trying to, because what I learned before was just how to run from it and avoid it.
Yeah. So if Ty or I had a loved one, we would come to you, to your organization, and say, like, hey, come equip me and my family on how to better help my loved one.
Yep.
And you've talked a lot about, like, a lot of successful people who may be the least inclined to go do that could be some of the most needing to do that. Talk to me a little bit about the people who don't have the means and kind of what you do with that, because you do some cool stuff there too.
Well, thank you. I mean, we all know that in any industry or wherever we live, there's a percentage of people that have a different level of success than everyone else. In our community, there are both. And yes, the people with the most success are often the last ones that seek help, but when they do, it's game changer. I mean, we're at like almost 95% of those families whose loved one are in long-term recovery. But the part that breaks my
Incredible,
heart,
by the way.
yeah,
That's a
thank
stat.
you.
Like,
Yeah,
So there's programmatic action that ensures the right outcome. It's not just like, oh, this one it worked and this one it didn't.
95% isn't a 50-50 coin toss.
no, it's not. It's
That's a
high-level
working
success.
recipe.
And it's not just getting them into treatment. It's like knowing exactly how to keep them there, how to utilize boundaries and incentives and the resources you have for long-term success, giving them time to heal.
And not to ruin your family in the process.
But let's just take the majority. The majority are people who are working hard, getting by, trying to build life. It's the teachers of the world, the good people. What really kills me is how many spouses. So in our program, we have a program for parents and one for spouses. Is those whose spouses, here they are as a woman, she's got 4 kids, husband was successful, is deteriorated, now he's off the rails. They're left trying to pick up pieces and make sense. And they've been seriously affected financially.
Yeah.
Or families, anyone who's had a loved one in addiction knows that they've forked out some big bills.
Yeah.
Often failed attempts at a treatment, medical bills, paying for all the wreckage in their life. So these families are seeking help. And I'm glad you asked, because we've created a foundation. Our foundation supports these families, right? The ones we're talking about. And the ones I love are like teachers and amazing people whose loved ones taken a toll. These are people who've sought help, families who've reached out to say, I'm raising my hand, we need help, please. They've gone through a process of being approved, but the obstacle, the barrier for them of getting this help is financial. And so we've created a nonprofit that says, hey, for those families that have the means, they can help these families have success. And I love the analogy you learned in Africa with that human trafficking. This is to change families, not just to get their loved ones started, but to know what to do when they get home, to heal the environment that they left. And that produces
The real
long-term
results.
success. And so that's who the foundation supports. And these are families who are eager to do the work. They're willing to do the work. They're open to doing what's required of them. But still to this day, I battle the big thing. Well, if you care about people in addiction, why don't you go help them? Just out of context, there's 274 licensed programs in Utah. 5 years ago, there were 90. 10 years ago, there were 7. 272 now. Programs available with insurance that will pay for almost all the treatment for the sick person. But we still remain the lone wolf for the programs who are fully supportive of the family.
You're the only program focused on that in Utah. That's crazy.
There's a handful of programs that when they get the sick person offer resources to the family. But why are there, again, 5% of people getting into programs that need help?
Well, and it's interesting too, because even
No driving force.
Great.
But
yeah.
even in treatment, they tell you to change, like they tell the sick person to change their environment. They say you got to cut off your old friends.
Yeah.
They say you got to cut off. But yeah, I mean that it I don't know that it was caused somewhere, but it grew somewhere, right? Like the whole environment needs to probably be sterilized, altered, changed, rehabbed, whatever to support it. That seems very obvious to me.
Well, even in the most amazing homes, like if your environment is healthy, you still have to have an understanding of what to expect, what the benchmarks are,
What to do when they mess up.
yes,
Yeah.
how to react, how to respond. A lot of
Protect your heart and yourself in the process,
Yes.
all of that.
seeing things for what it is at that moment instead of what you want it to be too quickly. All of those are practical things that when families do, man, it's transformative. The challenge we have is the amount of people that are like, okay, help us. Because most of them are so focused on this person, believe it or not, they become addicted to the chaos of this person. They're like, just fix them, just help them.
Yeah.
But when people say, okay, you know what? No, help me. It is unbelievable the amount of success that people have when they take that step and say, I need help.
I love that. I feel like you've always just been kind of like a breath of fresh air. It's like you couldn't say something that's going to surprise you. You've seen it all, you've done it all, and you just have a big heart and want to help people. And I love like the multifaceted dynamic of this whole approach, and you're running a business and you're, out there killing it with this business model. And then separately, you're also recognizing there's a whole cohort of people that can't pay for what I do. And I want to create a forum for people to donate to be able to support people in that journey. And I love that you're, all around doing so much. And I think, I have a ton of respect for someone who is taking all of their talents and applying them to something so noble. So like, thanks for what you do. And I've loved, like learning more about it. And I think for everybody, life is hard. There's things you're going to face. There's stuff you're going to go through. And how do you cope with that? It's not eliminate the problems. That's not realistic. So figuring out how to have healthy coping mechanisms and being appropriate. And I absolutely love the slogan, "Our secrets keep us sick." I just think it is so applicable. And I'm just grateful for everything you're doing.
I'm grateful to be on here. You guys have an amazing platform, and we're honored to be on here, and don't hope, because I know there will be several who listen, that I hope this sparks a change that you and your family deserve.
Well, thank you. Appreciate you being on.
Yeah.
If you like what you hear and are interested in joining the team, DM us on Instagram at RunXStreet.
What are you waiting for? Shoot us a DM and let's get going.